What's going on, guys? Today we got another knife review here for you. We're going to be looking at the oft reviewed, ever popular Shirogorov. This is the Mod95T, which I believe stands for turtle. I'm not sure why it does. Maybe these milling job on the titanium frame is like a turtle shell. I'm not sure, so I think that might be the reason. Shirogorovs have been the subject or topic of much controversy, not in recent past, but maybe months ago, given the crazy prices that they have been commanding of late. And I remember the Shirogorovs, they came out, quite a few years ago. I think not near the beginning of my knife collecting, but probably like, maybe a year into my knife collecting. So maybe it's like two and a half years ago. I remember seeing them on Robbie's channel, Smoke Eater 908. I think Carter was one of the early ones to get Shirogorovs, and I remember for Carter, he had a ton of issues with his with the original release of Shirogorovs. The metal steel inserts on the lock bar was falling off, or there was all kinds of crazy lock rock and whatnot in his. And so I remember for me, I was just like, man, just stay away from those blades as much as possible. And back then they were probably around $400 to $500, and so and that was still quite a bit of money, but in retrospect they were a bargain. Those are bargain basement prices, in my opinion. Nowadays, obviously, Shirogorovs, command well into the 800, 900, sometimes even 1,000, even more dollars, depending on what kind of variation, what kind of blade steel, what kind of bearing settings you have, whether they're on phosphor bronze washers or single row bearing system or multi-row bearing system and whatnot. The multi-rows definitely command all kinds of just crazy prices. And Shirogorovs, they use all different kinds of steel as well. I've seen Chronodor, S30, S90, M390, LMAX, even 440C for some of the lower ends. In Shirogorovs, they have so many different kinds of models, like the Mod 95. There's a Mod 111. That's just, I think, the millimeter length of the blade. They have a Toboggan, which is an axis lock version of Shirogorovs. They have the Hati, which is basically a G10 presentation scaled version or carbon fiber version of the Mod 95, and then it still has a frame lock. And then the last one that I've seen, I think, was the F3, which is basically a liner lock version of the Mod 95 as well. So a lot of stuff, a lot of information that I just went over, and I haven't even introduced who the Shirogorovs are. Lately there have been a lot of Russian makers, a lot of foreign makers, not including Canada. Canada definitely has a lot of well-known custom makers. But out of the blue, it just seemed like all these Russian makers, even now like Chinese makers, are coming out of the woodworks and are putting up some incredible knives. And Shirogorov is definitely one of the other ones. And I think what has made, and again, you've probably seen this or heard this a number of times, so maybe I'm just beating a dead horse here, but what makes Shirogorovs legendary, outside of the shape, I think the shape is awesome. I think it's very classic lines for a great knife, full flat grind and whatnot. What makes them incredibly popular is how smooth they are. And I am not the most prolific like knife collector or anything like that. I have a somewhat decent collection, but compared to some other guys with crazy custom knives, I think they would all say that the Shirogorov is probably one of their top flippers, if not their best flippers, in terms of like smoothness. This version again, is the Mod 95T. This one has single row bearing system in it. You can tell what kind of system it is right under there. So this one has that little sun kind of icon right there. So that is, single row bearing system. If it's a multi-row bearing system, then it'll have MRBS engraved into the frame. And then if it doesn't have anything there, then I believe it's just a phosphor bronze bushing. From what I've seen in pictures, so a lot of knives, so say like this Todd Begg Bodega. This one is the carbon fiber field grade version. These run on IKBS. These are actually running on ceramic IKBS, so it makes for even extra smooth flipping. But as you guys know, IKBS are loose ball bearings. They are I think 1/16 of an inch in terms of diameter. That might be overestimating. Don't quote me on that, but they're really small. They're tiny little bearings, about 12 of them that run around the pivot inside, and it runs directly on top of the blade, and then runs on a little track that is milled out on the inside. For the field grade ones, you have the carbon fiber milled out, but then you also have a steel plate that Todd Begg puts in there, a little steel washer inside. So the bearings run on metal rather than on the carbon fiber G10, because it would just wear it prematurely. And then for knives such as, say this SOCOM Delta from Microtech, it runs in a nylon race, and then those bearings are, pressed into that nylon. So for the Grimsmo as well, he custom makes his own bearing system, but it's the same thing essentially. I think he just makes it a little bit more efficient or a little smaller so that it fits, his needs for his knives a little bit better. But it's really cool that the fact that he, makes his own bearings. Consequently, Microtech also runs ceramic bearings in their nylon race. This is obviously just run on phosphor bronze washers, but I can still flick it out, not as smoothly. But the Shirogorov, from what I saw in pictures, was a pretty large steel plate, and then those washers are pressed, very fine and small washers, and there's quite a few of them that are all pressed in there. For the multi-row, I believe that there's just more bearings that are pressed along that steel washer or race system, if you will. But it's not like GTC bearings or anything like that. It's still pressed in there, but it is metal on metal, so I believe it makes for an even smoother pivot area, if you will. And so what that honestly, this is the smoothest. I mean, there is no shaking on this knife. It's just letting the weight, you can't get this in the angle, but I'm basically just pivoting around, this, and letting the blade just drag it down, This pivot is not loosened or tight. I can't loosen or tighten this pivot at all, and it just, this is one of the few knives that I can just do this and then it just slide, or it just kind of swings around the pivot freely like this. The Grimsmo is also extremely smooth, and you can kind of do that with his pivot system, but it's still, I kind of have to give it a little bit of a wrist flick down in order to coax the blade to go in. This Delta on the ceramic bearings, is a heavier blade, so one little quick, well, now it requires a little shake, but this one also is normally extremely smooth to go down. And then even on IKBS free rolling bearings, I have to give it a little bit of a shake in order for it to go down. And yeah, but again, this Shirogorov is just so effortless in terms of how it goes back into its frame. And of course, you know, why is that important? It's not in terms of functionality. It's just cool. When you're talking about construction, I mean, this is considered a mid-tech knife, if you will. I mean, it's machine made, but outside of the Grimsmo, I mean, I would say it's smoother than the Grimsmo, which is saying a lot. But again, I mean, this is quite possibly one of the most precise and well done, well executed knives out there. I mean, when they talk about something like the Chris Reeve Sabenza, you know, with all the tight tolerances and how great it is, and it is, you know, but it's not on bearings, and it's still, no matter how, you know, I depress that frame lock, actuate the frame lock, and it's smooth on the phosphor bronze washers, but once it hits that detent, or is, you know, rubbing against the detent, I can't even shake this down. I have to, you know, really like flick my wrist to get that down. You know, when it's running on those bearings and on that detent, you know, that detent is not, there's like so little friction on there. And I think, you know, for us knife guys, yeah, we obsess about it all the time. But when you get a knife that is this smooth, you just become so like impressed and, you know, by the construction, you know, by the quality of these makers, you know, and the work that they put into it. It's just absolutely incredible. You know, I mean, I'll speak for, you know, most of us knife guys, we are total suckers for that, but I think with good reason, you know. There's a lot of research, a lot of testing that goes into all these knives, and, you know, you do pay a good chunk of change, you know, to get these knives, but you know, there's something to be said, you know, when you you know, even like the first time I drove a BMW, or the first time I drove like a really high quality car, and you feel the difference in the power or the precision of those cars versus like my Toyota Camry. You know, that's what I own, right? A Toyota Camry is probably comparable to, like, I don't know, a paramilitary 2. It works and it's a good blade. But when you get a BMW, it's like, holy smokes, you know, how much torque there is in this car and how precise, and, you know, when you shift gears and all those things, it feels great. And man, that's like a nut and fancy reference right there when he compared some knives to cars. So I'm really sorry about that. But, you know, not enough can be said about these Shirogorovs. And, you know, there's guys that have, you know, you know, Jerry's got, you know, that really beautiful maple inlaid with Damascus blade Shirogorov, and it's just absolutely incredible. And some of the work that they have, you know, some of the milling that they do on the blades, it's really sweet, and it just looks, it really is that total package. So yeah, I mean, again, it might sound like I'm just beating a dead horse, and, you know, Shirogorovs they're not hard to come by. I mean, if you can probably find a good deal. I actually got this directly from a guy from Russia, so I actually ended up getting a decent deal on this one. Still overpriced, but, you know, under some of the dealer prices. So we won't get into, you know, all that conversation and dig up old skeletons and stuff like that. But anyway, finally, I'm just, you know, getting my review out of the Shirogorovs, and, you know, one of my favorite Shirogorovs is the one with the carbon fiber inlay. You know, that's my favorite iteration, a version of the Shirogorovs. I'd really love to get one of those with a good steel on it, but you know, none of them have come up at the right price, and, you know, really it is just about waiting, being patient, and not pulling the trigger too early. I've done that a number of times. Luckily, I haven't, you know, gotten stuck in that pattern, so I was able to get out of that a little bit early. So anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Shirogorov. Again, just of the Mod 95. I've never tested or felt any other. My example of Shirogorov is, honestly, is quite near perfection. compared to all my other knives. So as an EDC blade, maybe a little bit long, you know, 3.875, 3.75 inch blade for some people, but for me it's perfect. So yeah, anyway, let me know what you guys think on the comments down below on the Shirogorov. You guys have heard it all before, but I'd be interested to see what you guys think. Alright guys, so I will see you guys on the next vid. You guys take care, and see you later. Bye.